I'm a pretty experienced traveller and I enjoy the world. I enjoy the differences we see, but I have to tell you that I really would not bother coming to Moscow. The plus side is it's a very historical city. It's really incredible from that point of view. It's got some amazing landmarks. St. Basil's Cathedral is just absolutely beautiful. There's some other stuff going on here, lots of communist era stuff as well, and that's all cool. But honestly, I couldn't imagine anywhere in the world I'd want to live less than Moscow, and here's why. First and foremost, it's a work city. That's the point of it. You want to make money, you come to Moscow. And yeah, there is some lifestyle things that do happen, but look, you compare it to, say, New York City, where there's also a lot of work and also a lot of drive and ambition. But there you also have a lot of lifestyle that kind of goes with it, right? There's a bit of balance there. Whereas here, there's really little balance. It's really just to make money, and people work just some of the craziest hours. Even just in like a normal job. It's not just like a high-end professional corporate thing. It's like just any job. Like, for example, I know this girl that works in a coffee shop. She works 3 days on, 1 day off, right? So it's not too dissimilar to a 5-day on, 2-day off kind of situation. But on the days on, she works 13 hours. So she works 39 hours in 3 days and then has 1 day off. 39 hours in 3 days and 1 day off. So she's working 60 to 70 hours pretty much per week. And I've noticed this in the value system, that the work kind of comes first and then second is kind of way down there somewhere, and it doesn't really matter. Of course, I'm exaggerating a little bit to prove a point, but again, look, very work-heavy place. If you're not in the catchment area here in terms of countries that might want to come here to make money, I really don't imagine why you'd want to live in Moscow. Second thing I really don't like about Moscow, and again, this is not every Moscovian, don't get all sensitive on me. Oh, you're stereotyping. I'm presenting themes that you'll notice if you come to this city. So second thing is, there's more of an edge towards materialism and image-based living. So people are more concerned about what someone thinks about them or how they're perceived rather than how they actually are. So people will spend excesses just to get the right outfit, the right handbag, etc., to fit the part. And this is one big thing that you notice here, is that people present themselves really well, surprisingly, compared to Western countries. I mean, I look at Australia, for example, my city of Melbourne, mate, people don't give a shit. I mean, if you're like a hipster or trying to be cool or something, that's different. But for the average person in the burbs, they really just don't care. And the biggest contrast was when I came from Finland, inside of Russia, and I caught the bus over from Helsinki. And in Helsinki, look, people just don't give a shit how they look. They're kind of podgy. They're not fat, obese, but just a bit podgy, wearing just kind of old clothes that didn't look good when they were purchased. You know what I mean? Like, they just don't really give a fuck, essentially. And then you come to somewhere like Moscow and people care. Image matters, you know? I mean, especially the young girls, they put so much time and effort into their look. It might not be a traditional feminine look, and a lot of the time nowadays it's not. But whatever look it is, it's incredibly well put together and time consuming and expensive, and right in fashion. They're really into the fast fashion thing here as well. So as an Australian, for me, this is kind of lame, right? There's a big disconnect in values. Whereas, yeah, okay, I want to look half decent, but I don't want to preoccupy myself worrying about this stuff. Like, the world's far more interesting than what you're wearing, right? So that's my culture coming in. Whereas here, I mean, look, Russians do have a lot of depth to their character, typically speaking, but I don't want to waste my time worrying about this stuff, really. I'd much rather think about something more interesting. Third reason why I suggest you should not live in Moscow, and that's the nature of relationships here. More so than anywhere I've ever seen. Relationships have this feeling of being transactional, right? If you do for me, I'll do for you. What's the benefit I'm getting out of something, right? So if you go back to more traditional European culture, you have Christianity, right? And like all traditional cultures, it teaches you to be empathetic, and it teaches you to give no matter what. You always give. You always be kind, right? And then if everyone gets together, if everyone follows this, then everyone's being kind to each other all the time. So in theory, you can see how it can create a really nice society, great relationships, and so forth. Now again, to all the little snowflakes there, oh, Russians aren't like this, Moscovians aren't like this. I'm saying it tends to be more here than most other cities I've visited. Let me give you an example. This was literally 2 days ago. I was sitting in a cafe here in Moscow, reading a book. Right? This rather striking woman who might have been maybe 30 sat kind of next to me, right? So that's interesting. And I noticed her look over a couple of times. I was like, okay, I'll have a bit of a chat to this girl, right? Now, within 5 minutes, right, 5 minutes of talking, I don't know her. She doesn't know me, right? We're just talking. She tells me how she's married. And I'm like, congratulations. And she's like, oh, I'm only with him because I can't afford my own place. I'd much rather live alone, right? And she was saying this in a very just matter-of-fact, simple way. I was like, okay, that's a lot to share with a stranger, but whatever. So I'm like, just to clarify, you're just with your husband for money, so he can pay for your stuff and pay for your life without you doing anything. Is that correct? She's like, yeah, pretty much. Okay. So do you love him in any way? She's like, no, I'd much rather get rid of him and live on my own, but I can't afford it, so I don't. And she had like a side hustle. I mean, she wasn't even working, essentially, just living off this guy. I'm like, okay, how long have you been married for? And she's like, 2 years. And I'm like, okay. Did you love him in the beginning? She's like, no, he just put a proposal to me, so I thought it was probably worth it. So we got together now. Now, again, this is probably an extreme example, but I've never heard of this in Australia, right? And I've seen enough examples of this to know that it's a bit of a thing here. It's not every relationship. There's lots of healthy marriages here, no doubt, as well. But again, it's kind of this transactional feeling to a lot of these, and that is literally, I mean, it's like long stream prostitution. I mean, that's kind of what it is, right? It's like almost like sugar daddy or something like this. It's not even pretending to care about each other. Maybe I'm in the wrong, maybe I'm being too sensitive, but I don't think most people want to have a relationship that's this transactional, right? And including most Russians too, probably. Stop right there. If you're enjoying this content, do click like. The more likes I get, the more I know that people like this kind of content, and the more videos like this one I will make in the future. And within this transactional feeling is also a feeling of conditional love, right? Conditional love. So I've heard so many people here say that a man must solve a woman's problems, almost always termed in that same way. Must solve a woman's problems and then she will love him later. It's like the man must do stuff for the woman first and then she'll reciprocate. So this conditional love, right? And when you think into a traditional society, remember the vows of marriage, it's about unconditional love, right? That's the point of it. You always give, and if everyone keeps to this, then we're all giving to each other and then we're all kind of happy, right? But here I just see this, I'll do it if you do it for me kind of attitude. And all of a sudden I understand why the divorce rate here is higher than most Western countries, certainly higher than Anglo countries. I understand why I've met so many women in their 20s who are already divorced once. I've met so many women in their 30s divorced once or even twice already. In fact, I met one woman who's 27 who'd been divorced twice and was about to get married for the third time at age 27. And I'm like, to me, this is just insanity. Like the cultural clash there is so significant. Now, because of the era we live in, I have to keep emphasizing not every Russian couple or every Moscovian couple is like this. And they're not, definitely, but there's enough down that end of things to know that the whole distribution of how things work is kind of shifted a bit more that way. Now, there will be a lot of more loving and caring people, more loving and caring relationships that are based more on what we would think of as love traditionally in the West, but just the sheer volume of these kind of semi-transactional marriages. And I can see a lot of women, and again, this is really in Moscow a lot more than the rest of Russia for sure. This is kind of, what can I get from the man? Like, how can I benefit? It's never a sense of they're really together. It's just, what purpose can he serve me? So these are 3 reasons why I don't really like Moscovian culture. And although I've enjoyed my time here, and I've had some great experiences, met some incredible people, blah, 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 I ultimately have a real culture clash with Moscow, and I sincerely would not want to live here. Other parts of Russia, maybe second-tier cities, I could live there. Moscow, never.